Okay, so I want to tell you how this happened, how this particular topic happened. I was speaking to basically some of my younger sisters over here, and I was like, what are we going to talk about? Like, it has to be something interesting, and they're like, oh, talk about Mashiach. I'm like, great, I'll talk about Mashiach. So then I call my big sister, and she's like, I'm like, we're going to talk about Mashiach. And she goes, nah, that's boring. You should talk about Kavanaugh. And I said, who's that? And then I said, no problem. Let's do both. So we're going to do both. So we're going to talk about the arrival of Mashiach and the Kavanaugh conflict. Because what could be better and what could be more fun than doing something that's going to alienate all of our friends when we're finished? It's going to be really, really unbelievable and wonderful. So I want to just start out. The whole Mashiach thing, what does it mean? Like, who is he? Who is he? What does he look like? How do I know when he's here? Okay, because you understand that false Mashiachs have been doing their thing for a long, long time. Like, if you were to ask, I think most people who are somewhat learned Jewishly in terms of, history and that sort of thing, they say, oh, the first false Messiah would be like Shabtai Tzvi. Not so much. The first false Mashiach probably would be, anybody know? What was that? Jesus. Yeah. According to the Jews, the first false Mashiach is Jesus. And this is a question that I get oftentimes from my Christian friends. They say, Sprung, why don't Jews accept Jesus? Why don't you accept Jesus? And that, by the way, that's a very reasonable question. Like, why not? It's not like he was coming from, out of left field and he wasn't some Jewish guy. No, he was a Jewish guy. And he was living at the right time, and he was saying all the right things, or at least many of the right things. So why did the Jews exactly reject him, and why did we say that he's, in fact, not the Messiah? And then you have Shabtai Tzvi, and you have Frank, and you have so many long list of people who claimed to be Mashiach. How do you know? Like, when the guy comes in the door, when he comes knocking at your house, and he says, I would like a donation, please, and you say, okay, $180, and he says, no, I'm Mashiach. I would like $180,000. I think it would be beneficial to the person on the other end of the door to know whether, in fact, he is Mashiach. By the way, I'll tell you right now, he's not. He's not. The guy that wants $180,000 is not Mashiach. But how do you know? So, and then when he does come, when Mashiach shows up, what happens? Like, what? Does your tuition go down? Like, what? How? What does Mashiach do? What does it look like? It's like fairies and pixies and all sorts of. So that's what we're going to do today. So to begin, we are going to learn a little bit from the Rambam Maimonides. Maimonides says as follows. Anybody know, by the way, what Mashiach means, the word? Savior, Redeemer. This is, right? Anointed. Yes, exactly. People think that Mashiach means Savior or Redeemer. Why? Because that's how the concept's introduced to us. Right, when we're kids. Mashiach, he's going to come, he's going to solve all your problems. He's the Redeemer. Doesn't mean that. You know what Mashiach means? Christ. The word Mashiach means Christ. Why do you think they called him Jesus Christ? It wasn't his last name. He was Jesus Schwartz. Christ means anointed. And anointed means Mashiach. So in fact, anointed with what? Ketchup? Who's doing the anointed? The anointing? Upon who and why? The answer is very simple. Because in Judaism, biblically, the kings were anointed with the special Shemen HaMishcha, the anointing oil. By the way, so was Queen Elizabeth Regina II. This is not something that like only Jews do. Other people have in fact discovered the marvelous properties of oil for anointing and all sorts of other things. So yeah, we anoint our kings. We also anoint our Kohanim Gedolim, our high priests. We also anoint the Kohen Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen who is anointed for war. You may have heard a little bit of that in the language. The priest, Mashiach, anointed Milchama for war. He's anointed for war. So this guy, this Savior, this Redeemer fellow is in fact called the Anointed One, and we call him the Anointed One because we are going to in fact anoint him. And why do we anoint him? Because he's the king. He's the king of the Jews. What? Judaism is a monarchy? Ha, who would have thunk? But yes, Judaism is in fact a monarchy. So let's go to the Rambam, grandest of all Jewish philosophers, unbelievable. I'm not making a bracha because I was already drinking. Otherwise, I would have done it so that everybody could say amen. It would have been fun. Rambam says as follows. Al yala ala lev. It should not go up in your heart. You shouldn't think. Don't think that when the Mashiach comes, the world is going to change. Oh, yes, Sham Chiddush b'Maaseh Bereishis. Or if you think there's going to be like some kind of a switch in creation. No. The world goes exactly like it does now. So, sorry about that lack of tuition reduction. In fact, if anything, it will probably go up by all accounts. Amru Chachamim, our wise men said, Ein bein ha'olam hazeh limot HaMashiach ela shibud malchiot bilvad. The only difference between these days that you and I are living in right now, ahora, and the Mashiach that people like to call the Olam Haba, the next world. You got this world and you got the next world. Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, this world and the next world. People make the mistake of thinking that when Mashiach comes, everything gets topsy-turvy. No, that's in fact not the case at all. So what is the difference? The Jews will not be under the boot of any other kingdom. The Jews will not be a vassal state. The Jews will not be beholden to the United Nations or to the Iranians or even to the Americans or the Japanese. They will be autonomous. That, according to Rambam, is the only difference between this world and the next world, between this world and Mashiach, which is to say nothing at all physically. Yeah, but why should I believe you? Like, why should I believe the Rambam? I mean, maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. Why should I believe him? So he says something fantastic. He says, well, don't think that the king, the Mashiach, has to do all sorts of hocus pocus and magic and raise the dead. Don't think that. Ein hadavar kain, Rambam says. That is not a fact. How does he know that it is not a fact? He says, Rabbi Akiva chacham gadol mechachmei HaMishnah haya. Because Rabbi Akiva was a great master from the time of the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva that everybody's heard of, the one who was martyred, killed by the Romans, he was a great sage in the time of the Mishnah. And he used to carry around the luggage of this guy named Bar Kuziba, who sounds a lot like another character, Bar Kokhba. During the Bar Kokhba rebellion, when the Jews fought against the Romans, Rabbi Akiva thought that Bar Kokhba was Mashiach. He never had no time. By the way, how did that rebellion end? I'll give you a hint. Poorly. Can you say Holocaust with knives? That's how it ended. The Romans Judenreined Judea. They kicked everybody out. They renamed Judea to another name. What was the name that they renamed it to? Palestine, there it is. They renamed Israel, at that time actually Judah, Palestine. Why did they do that? Because they hated the Jews. Why did they hate the Jews? They got along for such a good time, for a long time, because the Jews fought a lot and they fought hard. And in fact, they fought so hard that the Romans were forced to strip legions from Gaul to bring them to fight in Judea. In fact, the Romans were so happy when they finally conquered the Jews that they minted a new coin. It is a famous coin called the, anybody know? Judea Capta coin. Why did they call it Judea Capta? Because it means exactly what you think it means. And they minted a new coin throughout the realm to celebrate this great victory that they had over the rebellion, which was led by, you got it, Bar Kokhba. So it ended in disaster. It ended in Auschwitz. And here's Rabbi Akiva, who thinks that Bar Kokhba is Mashiach. But see, here's the cool thing, and this is what the Rambam's trying to tell you. He goes, if the Mashiach can actually fly on a Pegasus and shoot thunderbolts out of his hands, like the Emperor in Star Wars, then Rabbi Akiva, instead of assuming Bar Kokhba was Mashiach, probably should have said something first. What do you think he would have said first? Excuse me, Mr. Bar Kokhba, before we get started on this rebellion against Rome, can you do me a favor and just turn someone into a frog? Just something minor, very, very minor. Can you fly a little bit for me? Maybe a little thunder, just a little bit of thunder. You don't have to go all Thor or anything. This isn't the Marvel comics, but something. Why didn't Rabbi Akiva ever ask Bar Kokhba to do hocus pocus? Because Mashiach has nothing to do with hocus pocus. That's why. Nothing at all. Which means to say that if someone tells you that this guy's Mashiach, and you say, really, how do you know he's Mashiach? It's because he looks at you and he knows your soul. And he tells the future, and he raises the dead, and he was resurrected, and all those wonderful things. You could say that's really cool, high five, that has nothing to do with Mashiach, but I'd love to grab a beer with him sometime and talk about how he did it. Very simple. So the Rambam uses very, very elementary proofs to show that Mashiach is not magical. He's a dude. He's a dude. Okay, it's just a dude. I mean, it's a little bit disappointing because I was kind of hoping, for some kind of magic. And nothing changes in the world? Like nothing? The flowers don't grow any higher and the chocolate isn't sweeter and I still gain weight when I eat on Shabbos? Like, so what's the point? What's the point of this whole thing? It's very, very weird. Very weird. So as we said before, yeah, the only thing that changes is, in fact, we will no longer be under the boot, a vassal to any, we will no longer be a vassal to any kingdom when the Mashiach comes. Okay, I mean, again, it's a little bit disappointing because I was hoping for something more. I was hoping for something more exciting than that. But it turns out, Rambam says something really weird. He says, well, if there arises a king from the house of David who is an expert in Torah, and he gets the Jews to do the right thing, to toe the line, then you can assume, hareze bechezkat shehu Mashiach. You can assume that he is the Mashiach. Im asa, if he did this, v'itzliach, and he is successful, ubana mikdash bimkomo, and he got the temple built, v'kibeis ninchei Yisrael, and he brings all the Jews back to Israel, hareze Mashiach bevadai, then he's definitely the Mashiach. But if not, then, he was like any of the nice kosher kings who failed to bring all the Jews back to Israel and free us from our enemies and build a temple. Which means, if somebody says to you, my rabbi, this guy, whoever he is, whether he's Shabtai Tzvi, whether he's Rabbi anything, my rabbi is the Mashiach. You say, oh, that's wonderful. Did he bring all the Jews back to Israel? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, he's not Mashiach. And if the answer is yes, he did, and you say, oh, did he free us from all of our enemies? And the answer is no, he's not Mashiach. And if he did, you say, well, did he build the temple? And if the answer is no, then he is not Mashiach. Now, if you have done 2 out of these 3 things, are you Mashiach? No. And if you've done 1 out of these 3, are you Mashiach? No. And the one thing that every false Messiah that I've ever seen throughout history has in common with me and you is that all of them and all of us have done none of these 3 things. Which is to say that every single false Mashiach has exactly the same chance of being Mashiach as you and I, which is to say, not a lot at all. We have tied the world record for least amount of criteria in order to bring Mashiach. That's where we are. Now, truth is, yes? Is a dude? Is a dude. Oh, why not a dudette, right? Because a dudette would be way too smart to venture into dealing with the Jewish people. Yeah. A human. Yeah. Because a king is a human. He's a head of state. A head of state is a human being, flesh and blood and bone and hair. Maybe not so much hair. He's Jewish. Maybe a beard. But yeah, he's definitely a person. He's a human. He's anointed. But he's just not, he's not Dumbledore. That's the point. The point is that he's not Dumbledore. So the truth is that if you read the Rambam that we just read, you might say, sprung. It feels like the Rambam is lying a little bit. It feels like he's lying a little bit. It feels like he's just a little bit disingenuous because he says that there's no difference between this world and when Mashiach comes. But in fact, it seems that is an argument. That is an argument. So, we go to the Talmud in Brachot, Tractate Brachot, the very, very first Masechet in Shas. And the Gemara says as follows. V'amar Bichia bar Abba amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Kol hanavim kulan lo nisnabu el limos haMashiach. All of the prophets, since forever. By the way, we should get to a place, Carlos, where we can have the quotes on the bottom of the video. That would be amazing. We have to do that. So he says all of the prophets prophesied about Mashiach. But, aval olam haba, when it comes to the next world, ayin lo rasa elokim zu lasecha. No eye has ever seen it other than yours, God. Once again, I'm going to say that again. He said all of the prophecies that you read about in Isaiah and in Jeremiah and even in the Bible itself, all of those prophecies that you read, those are not referring to olam haba, the next world. They are not. They are referring to what? The time of the Mashiach. The next world, no prophet has ever seen hide nor hair of it. Well, you know what this means, don't you? This means that Mashiach, in fact, is not olam haba. When people talk about olam haba, they are not referring to Mashiach. So instead of saying there's this world and there's next world, what you really mean to say is that there's this world and then there's the Mashiach world in the middle, and then there is olam haba. There are three categories, it turns out, which is really, really strange. But this is what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now, upliga de Shmuel, and this argues with Shmuel. Shmuel was a rabbi who lived at approximately the same time, first generation Amoraic rabbi. And he said, Damar Shmuel said, Ein bein olam hazeh limot haMashiach ela shibud malchiot bilvad. There is no difference between this world and the days of Mashiach except for being vassals to other governments. So, it sounds a lot like the Rambam that we quoted is picking sides. You have two rabbis, you have Rav Yochanan and you have Shmuel. Rav Yochanan says all of the prophecies that you read about, these fantastic prophecies of like lions and sheep, cuddling up together and watching football and all these amazing prophecies, that's all talking about Mashiach. But the next world, that's a whole different thing. And Shmuel says, no, there's none of this business of lions and lambs. That's crazy talk. There's no difference between this world and Mashiach at all except political realities. So when Maimonides says, when the Rambam says, and I promise you the Rambam is not wrong, he's never ever wrong. When the Rambam says that there's no difference between this world and Mashiach, it seems a lot like he's choosing sides with Shmuel and ignoring Rav Yochanan. And in fact, because we're going to be honest together, because this is a no trigger zone and it's a safe space and we love each other. We're going to be honest. The Ravid who argues on the Rambam says, what are you talking about? And he cites the other verse. And the guys that come to the defense of the Rambam say, well, it's because he is holding with the opinion of Shmuel. Ah, how gallant. So the Rambam chose sides, which is fine. Rambam chooses sides all the time. I think you will find, if you give me approximately 3 hours by the time we're finished, that the Rambam is not choosing sides, and it seems like everybody's misunderstanding what he's writing, but we'll get to that soon. So, file all of that away in the back of your mind, and let us go to another Talmud, to Gemara in Sota. The very, very end of Tractate Sota, Gemara says, by the way, this is depressing. I'm sorry, but in advance, you're not going to like this. The Gemara says, Be'ikvas Mashiach, in the footsteps of Mashiach, chutzpah yaske. I don't know of a good translation for chutzpah. You could say like brazenness or nerve, but it's really just chutzpah. Chutzpah will be rampant. Hagefen titain piria, v'hayayin biyoker. Wine is going to be plentiful and still very expensive. Okay, thanks for telling me that. Umalchus teafech leminus, and the government will become heretical. Yeah, I mean, like every government. Ve'ein tochachos, there will not be any rebuke. There will be no more rebuke. Okay. Beis vad yeliznus, the yeshivas are going to become places of prostitution. Not very auspicious tidings, it seems. It goes on. By the way, I want you to know that I'm going to try diligently to put all this back together for you, but there are a few things here that I just simply don't understand yet. The Yirechet Yimasu, people who fear sin will be shunned. People will find them disgusting. Somebody who fears sin, everyone's like, ich yimasu, they're disgusting. Okay? V'ha'emes tiyeh nederes, and the truth will vanish. Truth will vanish. Na'arim penei zikenim yalbinu. Young people will humiliate older people. Ben menavel av, a son will denigrate his father. Bas kama be'ima kala b'chamosa, a daughter will stand against her mother, a daughter-in-law to her mother-in-law. That one's not a chiddush. Pnei hador kipnei hakelev. The face of the generation will be the face of a dog. Interesting. Ve'alma yesh lanu lihisha'ein. And upon what can we hold? Upon what can we lean? Al Avinu Shabashamayim, only on our Father in heaven. Okay, this is a very, very famous Mishnah. Like I said, not encouraging words, that before Mashiach comes, in the time that leads to Mashiach, in the footsteps of Mashiach, the world will go to hell in a handbasket. And the face of the people are the face of a dog, and no one's going to respect their elders, and wine will be very expensive despite plentiful, and the governments will be heretical, and no one will give rebuke. Okay. There are a few problems, I think, just on a simple level, understanding what is being said. The rabbi who wrote that, how did he know? Ask the simple question. Ask the simple question. The rabbi who wrote all those things, I wrote a few of them on the board, right? You got the footsteps of Mashiach, the face of the dog, the truth vanishes, the government's heresy, the thought leaders go to prostitution, right? I'm not good with handwriting and there wasn't so much space, but you get the point, right? It's all these things. So I'm wondering, the person who came up with this, the rabbi who had such unbelievable foresight, Weiterkook, whatever you want to say, that he was able to anticipate that all of these things were going to precede the generation of Mashiach. I would like to know by what Palantir, which for those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans, what special crystal ball did he use to determine that this was going to happen? Now, if you're going to tell me, well, maybe he was a prophet. He was not a prophet. How do I know he wasn't a prophet? Because this was written a long, long time after prophecy ended. So this is not coming from the prophets. So how does he know that? Now, I know you're not supposed to ask these questions, right? Like, you're not allowed to ask the question, because if you ask the question, then maybe you're not trusting the rabbis, and that's not a good thing to do. But I assure you, it's a very good thing to ask the question. You should ask the question. The Gemara anticipates that you're going to ask the question, and I assure you there's an answer. So never, ever, 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 ever in Judaism be afraid of a question. That's the first problem. The second problem, which I think is a deeper problem, the second problem is a word problem. It's a textual problem. The way that the Gemara framed this time, this era, this epoch, is Be'ikvot Mashiach, in the footsteps of Mashiach, which everybody and their uncle, if you go to them and you say, well, what does that mean? It was obviously in the time leading up to Mashiach. Lies, I say. Lies. Erroneous. How do you know that's erroneous, Sprung? Simple. Simple. The word Akev means heel. On the heels of. Yes? The expression survives in English today. On the heels of. Does on the heels of mean before or after? After! It means after. And of course it means after also in the Hebrew. You see in the Torah all the time. It says, why am I blessing you, Isaac, and all of your children? Akev asher shama Avraham b'koli. Akev, on the footsteps of that your father Avram listened to me. V'haya akev tishme'un eis hamishpatim ha'ila. And it will be if you listen to my statutes, then ... Because obviously, Akev, referring to the heel, is that which follows you. You drag it around, quite literally. So how can you possibly tell me that when the Talmud says, the Ikkus of the Mashiach, in the footsteps of Mashiach, you are reading this to say that all of these things are going to happen before the Mashiach comes? You have that backwards. You dig? That's a good question. It is problem. It means that you are reading the Gemara wrong. How are we going to get out of that one? Well, the Rambam said something very, very curious before. Something so curious that almost like if you're not being really, really careful with your reading, you probably won't pick up on it. Like it sounds like such a little aside. It's a side point, but he's saying, the Mashiach is going to do these things. He's going to bring all the Jews back, and he's going to free them from their enemies, and he's going to build the temple. And if he did some of these things and he didn't succeed, then he wasn't Mashiach. It's like, false start on the Jews, 5-yard penalty, new king. Like what? Did you ever anticipate that the Mashiach would go like halfway? He'd be like halfway Mashiach? Isn't that weird to you? Doesn't that sound so strange? But the Rambam's never strange. So what does he mean? It's so simple. It's so simple. And of course, completely counterintuitive, but so simple. Mashiach is a process. It's a process. There can be many people involved in the process, and I assure you there are and will be. It's a process. So if Mashiach is a process, which can have several false starts, or at least several incompletions, right? It's very Tannehill-ish. If it's a process, then when we say Be'ikvot Mashiach, in the footsteps of Mashiach, and we said that footsteps means because of Mashiach, then it means exactly what it says. It means exactly what it says. Because you see, Mashiach's going to take a really, really long time. And it's not going to go like this, and it's not even going to go like this. You know what it's going to do? It's going to do one of these, until finally you get there. And along with the concept of Mashiach, you are dragging those things. In the footsteps of Mashiach, because of the process, you will face these things. Fascinating. So not that Mashiach is going to come and then you're going to have those things, but rather because of Mashiach, because of the process of Mashiach, you will have those things. Which you see answers the other question, doesn't it? Because we said, I don't get it. Are you telling me that the rabbi who wrote this was like some kind of a prophet and he knew exactly how this was going to go? And like, how would he know that? Because to him, it's impossible that Mashiach can be completed without going through that. That is the logical, not culmination, but the logical trek, the trajectory through which Mashiach travels. Why would that be? That's so weird. Why? And what are those things? The face of the generation is the face of a dog. I mean, like, people bark at each other. Is that what it's saying? It's like a very tenuous kind of thing that you're saying. You understand, again, this is an important point. So please, if nothing else, then take this. The rabbis of the Talmud are telling you things that they feel you need to know. They're telling you something in order for you to understand it. They're not giving you the future, because that would be silly and irrelevant, because it'll happen however it happens when it happens. So if it's not something that you're supposed to understand, they're not actually giving you anything by telling it to you. So it must be that they're telling you the information because this information is actually helpful for you on your journey through life. So he's saying things that we are supposed to understand, and he's saying it to us in a way that he thinks we could get it. So what does this mean? I have a theory. And like I said, I can't answer up all of the things that the Talmud raises. I'm not there yet. But a few of them, I believe I can. First of all, just really cool theory. And again, I could be totally wrong. My father told me the other day, he's like, Shlomo, do me a favor. Whenever you say anything, just say, you might be wrong. I figure you all know that already. But in case my father's going to watch this, Abba, I could be wrong. It's going to get more depressing. When it says that the truth vanishes, how does the truth vanish? Truth doesn't vanish. Like, that's a strange thing to say. So you know what the Talmud says? You know the Talmud explains this? It says ne'ederet. This word right here, ne'ederet. The root is eder. Eder. You know what eder means? What? Oh, that would be avar. Eder. Eder comes up in the Torah. In fact, in the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach, Eder levado. Eder means flock. Flock. So the Talmud explains, what does it mean that the truth vanishes? The truth becomes Eder, 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 Eder. Nase ha'emes adorim adorim. This flock has its truth, and this flock has its truth, and this group has theirs, and I have my truth, and you have your truth. And because of that, because the truth will become grouped, because the truth will become flocked, the truth vanishes. Now let's look at some of the other things that the Talmud says, and let's try very hard not to cry. Be'ikvot Mashiach dor shechutzpah yaske. It is a generation where people have chutzpah. What does chutzpah mean? Chutzpah means a delinquency of hierarchy. That's what chutzpah is. Chutzpah is not in what you say. Chutzpah is in how you say it and to whom you say it. Just like the Gemara continues, that a son won't respect his father, and a daughter won't respect her mother, and a daughter-in-law won't give honor, and the young kids will humiliate the elders. Chutzpah yaske. It is a generation where you will have rampant chutzpah. Why? Because the hierarchy will break down. There will be no hierarchy. Everyone has exactly the same level of honor, and therefore there's no reason why I should watch my language around my grandfather. There's no reason why I shouldn't make silly jokes or perverted jokes around my rabbi. Why? He's a guy, I'm a guy, we're all just guys. Chutzpah yaske. Upnei ador kipnei hakelev. The face of the generation is the face of a dog. I have a cool theory. Want to hear my theory? Armando, you ready for this? I'm going to tell you. Okay. When we say hamalchut ta'apoch leminut, that the government will become heretical. Rambam is very clear. If you look in Hilchot Teshuvah, I didn't bring it because I figured there was enough reading and I didn't want to get like someone to throw a pan at my head. Minut is a very particular form of, I suppose, heresy. It's when a person does not believe in God, or he believes there are two or more gods, or he believes there is no reward and punishment for our actions. The government will become heretical in this way. What does that mean? Well, it means, until very recently, you may have noticed that every government, or at least many governments, and certainly many, many kings, felt that they had what they call the divine right of kings. God wants me to be king, and that is why I am king. And the reason that my nation is making war on your nation is because it is the right thing to do. Because God has given me, Genghis Khan, dominion over all that the great blue sky sees. I have the approbation of the Lord to do what I am doing. But you see, even in all of the tyranny and god-awful things that all of those people did through all of those years, they did, however, always go back to one point. God. Now, when you remove God, any God, it doesn't matter what God you happen to listen to or not listen to, but when you remove the idea of God from your Weltanschauung, from your worldview, from your government, what you are saying is, there is no such thing as true and untrue. There is no such thing as more holy and less holy. There is no such thing as better to do or not better to do. There is no such thing. There is no God. There is no ultimate reality to anything. There is no reward and punishment for anything that you do. Don't you understand? All there is the truth going here and here and here and here, because I have my truth and you have yours. And as long as I do what's true for me, and as long as you do what's true for you, that's really quite all right. That's really quite all right. And it's funny. You know how far it can go? It can go so far. It can go so far. It's unbelievable. If you were to call up, forget your grandparents. Forget your grandparents. It was like a long, long time ago, and they listened to 40s music. If you were to call your parents, and say to them, Mom, I'm a woman now. She'd be like, I'm sorry, who is this? This sounds a lot like Shlomo, but I was at your bris, so it can't be Shlomo. What is the point? The point is that you can take the idea of no truth. When you say no truth, what you are in fact saying is everyone is entitled to their own truth. And when you're entitled to your own truth, where is the limit on your truth? The answer is simple. Your imagination is the limit of your truth. Whatever you imagine, that's your truth. And good for you. And then the truth vanishes. And how does it vanish? Into little groups. This group, and that group, and the other group. Why would the leaders of thought, why would the intelligentsia descend into prostitution? That seems like a really strange thing, like promiscuity. Why all of a sudden the yeshivas are going to be promiscuous? This is what the Gemara is saying. It's saying that the greatest minds of the generation, the thought leaders, the philosophers, are going to descend into prostitution. Why? I mean, could it be any more simple? It's Bertrand Russell 101. It's Bertrand Russell 101. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. He was an ethics professor at Harvard, was he not, when he was found to be having an affair with one of his students? And when he was hauled in front of the ethics committee, his response simply was, and by the way, I applaud him for his candor and his elegance and his eloquence, and he said to the tribunal, to teach geometry, you don't have to be a circle. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Yes, I understand, I'm the ethics professor. Yes, I'm having multiple affairs with all of my students, and why not? Because the only thing that keeps a person from doing those things, other than his wife who might kill him, but beyond that, it's your honor. It's an ultimate truth. That's why you don't do it. It's not like, oh, you think that like chemically they're any different, these wise people? No, why? They're not different chemically, they're biologically. Obviously, they feel the same urges and desires as you and I do. But they don't act on them because that's despicable. So yeah, I understand that we have to be programmed a certain way, right? There's evolutionary biology there, and it's very, very important that people feel the way they feel. I need that. But that doesn't mean that you are actually an animal. You are built on top of the animal system. So when it says Pnei Hador ki Pnei HaKelev, the face of the generation is the face of the dog. What does that mean? I'll tell you what I think it means. Dogs. How do you say dog in Hebrew? Kelev, yeah? Kelev means kol lev, all heart. Dogs are literally man's best friend. Why? Because the way that you relate to them, they relate to you. Dogs pick up on your mood immediately. By the way, I'm not a dog owner, and I know this. But even though I knew it, I wanted to make sure that I knew it because I'm not a dog owner, and I have like 15 people in the like, that's not true. No, it's true. I looked it up. In fact, I read 2 studies this week on dogs. Fascinating, by the way. Really cool. Their sense of smell is off the chart. And lots of cool stuff. Point is, Pnei Hador ki Pnei HaKelev. The face of the generation is the face of the dog. Meaning, what you show it, it reflects back at you. The truth that you show them, they reflect back at you. Which brings me let's talk some truth, shall we? There are friends of mine who I care for very much and respect very much that told me they will not be coming today. And I said, are you busy? That's why we do it on Wednesday. No one's got anything going on Wednesday. They're like, no. I heard you're talking about Kavanaugh. I said, yeah, talking about Kavanaugh. Like, I can't go. Why? You don't know what I'm going to say. It doesn't matter. Rabbi, I can't talk about Kavanaugh. Why not? Why can't you talk about Kavanaugh? Because I feel very strongly about it. Right. You're not supposed to talk about the things that you feel very, very strongly about. Really, Rabbi, if you could please limit your learning to things that no one cares about, that would be great. This is not one person, and this was not 3 people. This was people. This is people. People who care for me and are afraid that if I say the name Kavanaugh on camera, I might get fired. You know what I think? if you're going to get fired for saying the name Kavanaugh on camera, you should quit. You should quit. You can't talk about things? Why not? Because it's simple. It's simple. Wag the dog. Did you see the movie? It's a great movie. Instead of the dog wagging the tail wags the dog. Pnei hador k'pnei hakelev. The face of the generation is the face of a dog. Why? Because if you get your news here, Kavanaugh's a rapist. Forget elevating him to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. The man should be in jail. And if you get your news here, he is a holy man. He is holy. To say nothing of HuffPo and Drudge. Regardless of how you feel about Kavanaugh, regardless of how you happen to feel about Kavanaugh, at least admit to yourself that 50% of the country watches this and feels one way, and the other 50% watches that and feels the other way. So regardless of how clear it is in your mind that you know the story and the ramifications, or that even if it didn't happen, it should be, I don't care about your opinion. By the way, I don't really have a horse in this race. But be aware. Be aware. The face of the generation is the face of a dog, and the truth is adarim, adarim, flocks and flocks. And when you have flocks and flocks of truth, the truth vanishes. And the government becomes agnostic. Your truth is fine. Your truth is fine. If your truth is to block streets, that's fine. That's fine. If your truth is not to, that's also fine. Your truth is fine. Ve'ein tochachot, and there are no rebukes. Why are there no rebukes? Because how could you possibly rebuke me? Because anything that you say that I'm doing wrong, what is my response? What do you mean? This is beautiful for me. Regardless of what side of the political spectrum you find yourself on, there's half the country's on the other side, I promise you. Half the country's on the other side of every single political idea you have. And any time that they say to you that you're doing something evil, you're not. You're not. What do you mean? I'm not doing anything evil. So you can't rebuke anybody anymore. Why? Because rebuke relies upon one truth. One truth. In order for me to rebuke you, by the way, the word rebuke is not a Hebrew word. In Hebrew, it's tochacha, which means to prove. Because tochacha is not about rebuking people and saying you did something wrong. It's about proving to someone what the proper thing is to do so that he or she can do that thing. It belies an assumption. The assumption is that all of my friends want to do the right thing. They just want to know what the right thing is. So if at any given time you see me doing something that isn't the right thing, please, by all means, come to me and tell me. That's what tochacha means. So it says there could be no reproof. That's where the word survives also in the English, the proof and to reprove. Why is there no longer reproof? Because there's no truth. And if there's no truth that we agree on, there can be no reproof. Do you want to see a very far and extreme example of this? Terrorism. Terrorism. Right? Last week, one of our alumni lost his cousin. She was murdered. She was murdered in Israel. She was tied up and executed, along with one of her coworkers. Okay? So, well, we can all get together on this and say, like, that is clearly very, very evil and dastardly, right? Like, we're all on board. Like, the whole world knows that whoever did that is going to die of diarrhea and rot in hell forever, right? Well, no, obviously not. Obviously not, because he is either the Antichrist for doing what he did, or he's a wonderful person that we are going to name a school after. You know this to be true. This is not a political issue. It doesn't stop at SCOTUS. It doesn't stop at SCOTUS. It's pervasive. So, try to wrap this all up. It's too much information. So, the rabbis understood that all of these things are being dragged along by the process of Mashiach. And no magic ever happens. It's completely natural. It's the natural human trajectory. Well, why? Why would that be? Because when Mashiach comes, the whole world will know the truth. The truth. It's not God of the Jews. My kid asked me this last week. Isn't great question, right? He's like, Daddy, I don't understand. It's like, the Jews have like Jewish God, and the Christians have Christian God, and the Muslims have their God. Like, everyone's got their God. And I had to explain to him, he's 13. I said, Donnie, there is no Jewish God. There's just God. There's just God. It's not Jewish God. It's God. The world will know the truth of itself. It will. But in order for the world to know the truth about itself, there's something very, very fundamental that has to happen first. And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. You know what's amazing about this? What's so amazing is that the rabbis knew this 2,000 years ago, which how the heck did they anticipate this without an internet? They said it's not possible for the whole world to know anything unless there was some sort of information system that was literally worldwide. What can we call it? It's unbelievable. I mean, do you grasp the force of these people? It's not possible that the verses that say, on that day God will be one. What, he's fragmented now? No, it means that everybody will acknowledge and recognize and see. But one second, how can that be? So there's one of two possibilities. Either you have to say that God is going to have a coming out party, and he's going to be like, hello, and everyone all over the globe, all 360 degrees, the people in Fiji, and the people in Bangladesh, and the people in the archipelago of whatever, they're all going to simultaneously see the alien landing of God, and he's going to be like, it's me, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. That's one possibility. What's the other possibility? Internet. The other possibility is that, in fact, the entire human race will have access to information. How much information? All of it. All the information. When will they have access to it? All the time. Whenever they like. Whenever they like. Do you want to hear the verse that Rambam cites when he describes this? I mean, it's so beautiful. He cites the verse. He says, the rabbis and the prophets, they didn't want Mashiach to come so they could be in charge of the whole world. And not and not so that they could trample on the other nations and be the head honchos and be really important. And not so that the other nations can raise the Jews all up on a pedestal and we can be so great. He goes, that's not why. And not to eat and drink and be merry. So that they should be open to wisdom and Torah. So that they could spend their lives doing things that animals don't do. Because animals eat and drink and sleep and do other things. Tell me that I am created for exactly the same thing that the cow is, only I have a nicer home. That's not what we're here for. Uva oso azman, and in that time, there will be no famine, there will be no war, there will be no hatred, there will be no competition, there will be no jealousy. Shehatova tihiyem mushpat harbe, because the goodness, the eternal goodness will be everywhere. V'chol hama'adanim mitzuyim ka'afar, and all of the luxuries are going to be like dirt. Dirt, don't you see? Like dirt. Because everybody knows in order to survive, you have to be within 2 miles walking distance of a well. And everybody knows that you better have an outhouse so that when you need to do your business like a dog twice a day, you don't have to step in it. And everybody knows that it's impossible to clean clothing because it takes hours and hours, and to knit them, forget about it. Because it's impossible to imagine a world where food is everywhere. What kind of food? Whatever you want. And that water comes out of your sink. And that you have bathrooms in the house that take all the yucky stuff away immediately. And if you have a Toto toilet, it's a whole other level. He says it's going to be like dirt. Like dirt. The luxuries of the world will be literally like dirt everywhere. And now, and therefore, the only reason that people are going to be around, the thing that they're going to want to do, is to understand God. This is not a religious thing. This is not a religious thing. Don't make the mistake of thinking that when Mashiach comes, if that doesn't speak to you, that's fine. It shouldn't. When we talk about knowing God, we're literally talking about physics. We're talking about understanding the nature of the universe. It's not some religious thing. It's physics. And therefore, Yisrael, the Jews, have all this information about God. V'yasigu dat boram kifi koach ha'adam. And each one will be able to understand God in his or her level. Shenemar, as it says, listen to the verse. Unbelievable. Ki mal'ah ha'aretz de'at Adonai, kamayim layam mechasim. The knowledge of God, the world will be so filled with the knowledge of God like the oceans cover the sea. The truth about everything will be everywhere, easily accessible, always. What does that sound like to you? Rambam wrote this 1,000 years ago. Rambam's quoting a verse that was thousands of years before him. What do you think they were talking about? Today. It's a process. It's the footsteps. It gets dragged along. But you see, once you have systems like that, once luxuries become so easy, wine will be everywhere, but it will still be expensive. What's the Gemara saying? It's saying that you get to a point where the only thing in the world that you are fixated on is luxuries, because all the other stuff is taken care of. So most people in Western society don't have to try to feed themselves. Feeding isn't hard. You work 1 hour at $5, you fed your family at McDonald's. 1 hour. This is impossible to fathom to the entirety of human history until very, very recently. So when you get to that point, what's left? Luxury. Hit me with it, baby. I'm going to work really, really hard because I want a nicer car and a faster plane and a bigger house and a cooler vacation and all those things. That's what I'm going to spend my life on. That's what I am going to use the 90 years that God has given me on this earth to attain. I would also like a diving board. It is inevitable, the rabbi said, inevitable that this will happen. Once knowledge goes everywhere, the hierarchy breaks down. Look at the last 50 years in the United States of America. All the hierarchies crumbled.
What will we with that thing?
Conflict. If I admit to myself that the truth that I know so strongly and so viscerally, if I admit to myself that my friend knows just as honestly and just as viscerally the opposite to be true, I'm confronted with two courses of action. I can shun him, or I can talk to him. How does our society respond? Shunning. If you disagree with me, not only are you stupid, you're evil. You are stupid and evil. I'm talking about families. I'm not talking about some guy you casually know from work or from the baseball game and sits next to you with the season tickets. I'm talking about families on Thanksgiving that blow up the family unit over politics. Who is that benefiting? How is that good? And understand how far that can go, because that ends with stabbings in the streets. That's where that ends. The idea that truth is not one thing for everybody, but that I have mine and you have yours. And that comes from a lack of dialogue. If I am not willing to coexist with you, and not merely tolerate you, but talk to you, communicate with you, come to an understanding about where the truth is, because we're both actively seeking it. If we don't do that, we get the face of the dog. But eventually, it ends in a very good place. Eventually, we're going to get together because we have to. If we don't blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons, it's the only other possibility. Eventually, the entire world will be filled with the knowledge of God like the oceans cover the seas. Peace and love. I'll take questions now if you have any. Yes?
So this is a very negative side to how Mashiach is going
Thanks.
to, which I was not expecting you to.
Mm-hmm.
But and to get to Olam Haba Yesu, which is the part that we don't know. However, when we
Oh.
ask for Mashiach, we
Yeah.
ask for Mashiach now always ask for Mashiach this way. We ask for Mashiach that it should come with merit. So there must be another way to get to Mashiach, not just this way.
Sure there is.
Which is?
Sure there is. We have all of the prerequisites lined up. Right? When he says it'll be a time when there's no war, and a time when there's no famine, and a time where there's no hatred. Say, but what has to change for that to happen? Nothing. Nothing. Only you. This is the truth. I say this to my modern Jewish history class. We talk about World War I. World War I was just the worst time in the world. Not for Jews, that was World War II. But for like everyone else, World War I, the worst. So you have a trench filled with British kids and French kids. And they're sitting in there in the death and the decay and the bombs, and they're saying to God, God, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And then 300 yards that way, there's a trench with German kids who are calling out to God, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And you know what God is doing? What do you want from me? Stop! Did I tell you to do that? Did I tell you to go there? Did I tell you to do that? No, you did it. You did it to yourself. We did everything to ourselves. We did everything to ourselves, and we continue to do everything to ourselves. So is it inevitable? Yes and no. It's human nature. We have to move through it. We have to evolve. It's a process. It's a process. Right, so this goes all the way back, honestly, to the Garden of Eden, because God could have just made us and been like, poof, live your little utopian existence. But then you didn't earn anything. You didn't achieve anything. You didn't become anything. The whole purpose of the earth is becoming. So we can become this, right? The way that I like to think about Mashiach, forget Olam Haba. I wrote it on the board because I was thinking maybe I would talk about it, but there's not enough time. It's like way over time already. And it's a whole different thing. Yeah, we could do another shoot. We could do Share on Olam Haba. Oh, we're going to blow some minds. So the way that I like to think about Mashiach is backwards. Backwards, not forwards. Right? We're like, what do we have to do to bring Mashiach? What's Mashiach going to be like? Wrong question. Wrong question. What's the right question? The right question is, after Mashiach comes, let's say he comes tomorrow or in 5,000 years. Doesn't matter. The day after, for the next billion years, everything's great. Right? Okay, everything's wonderful. Marvelous. Let's say you are alive in 3,000 years and Mashiach is already 2,700 years old, and it's a wonderful, wonderful world, and you're learning the history about 2018 and about 1920 and about 1860, and you're learning all that history. And what are you saying to your friends in the class? You're saying, those stupid, idiotic humans, those moronic ancestors of ours that couldn't get their crap together. That's what you're saying, right? That's exactly what you would be saying. Put yourself there. Being like, I don't get it. What did we have physically today in 2,000 years that we didn't have today in 2018? Nothing. I don't have to implant microchips in your head for you to not have war. You know how easy it is to cure war? It's super easy. All you have to do is want to. Have you ever noticed, unbelievable, we also feed the whole world? Of course we can feed the world. We burn enough produce in this country to feed all of the other nations. But well, we have to, keep the price up. But this is fascinating to me. We have a United Nations. I know it's a joke, but it exists. Okay? It exists. There is, in fact, a United Nations. The purpose of the United Nations, the stated goal of the United Nations is to end war. In fact, that verse is on the wall, right? And they will beat their swords into plowshares. Lo yisagoy al goy cherev, lo yeh od milchama. They will no longer do any war against each other. Marvelous. Tell me something. In the history of organizations, has anyone done a worse job at stopping wars than the United Nations? Yes. The answer, really, who? League of Nations. That's true. You're absolutely right. I stand corrected. Yes, and Woodrow Wilson turns in his grave even as we speak. What do you mean? Well, why not? Why, in fact, does the United Nations not stop war? No simpler question has ever been asked. Because they're not trying to. How do I know they're not trying to? See, because I'm a fan. I'm a little bit of a fanboy when it comes to these, these Jeff Bezos characters and these Elon Musk characters. A little bit of a fanboy. Like, I read about what Elon Musk is doing, and I'm like, okay, he's crazy. He's not crazy. But I'm like, wow. Right? Like, this guy was sitting around one day and be like, we should tunnel into the earth and make a superhighway. I'm going to do it. But how am I going to fund it? I'm going to sell flamethrowers, right? And he did this. You got to respect that guy. I mean, that's like amazing, okay? That's amazing. So if you really wanted to stop war, you would do what he did. You would do what he did. So he has this thing with Tesla. He's like, anyone who owns a Tesla, who has a glitch in the Tesla or has a suggestion, please let me know. And like guys were like tweeting at him. And he was fixing it on the floor. He was fixing it on the floor. Can you imagine Ford doing that? No way, right? No, but he's like, oh, good idea. Yeah, we should have the seats configured in a little bit different way. Because like, why not? Why not harness the power of the hive? Why not? Are we? Are we? Tell me something. If we were to allocate $5 billion, which is not a lot of money if you consider the United Nations and their massive budgets, $5 billion and have a worldwide competition. Have a worldwide competition. So you have 5 years to solve world peace. Whoever gets the closest wins the $5 billion. Don't you think, even though we wouldn't solve world peace in 5 years, don't you think we would have a million incredible ideas that would be worth a lot more than $5 billion? I mean, is that even a question? Of course it's not a question. When's the last time the United Nations tried to stop wars? I promise you, you won't stop them accidentally. You will only stop them if you try to. It's not like finding penicillin. You have to want to. And if you want to, you can. So when the Rambam's like, yeah, nothing changes. Everything's the same. The world works the same. You flip the switch, the light goes on, you turn it off, you go to sleep, the same. Very empowering. And also, how responsible, what kind of responsibility do we bear for allowing what is going on in the world? We're allowing it. Because again, day before, day after, the day after they stopped allowing it, we are allowing it. We are allowing it. Make no mistakes, we allow it. Did you have a question? Does that answer your question? Sure? Yes.
You talk about that mind that I once heard was like in drop.
So David is talking about a Gemara in Sanhedrin which says that the world is split up into 6,000 years, Alpayim Tohu, Alpayim Torah, and Alpayim Mashiach. And from this, people want to draw the implication that Mashiach has to come within the next 200 years or so because we're in 5779 and we have to be finished by the year 6000. I would tell you that people should not take Agadic Gemaras literally ever. They should look at what the Rambam has to say about that in his Hakdama of Pirush Mishnayos, last chapter of Sanhedrin. And second of all, specifically when it comes to this, Rambam writes, and it's not just Rambam, he's citing from the Gemara. The Gemara says, Tipach rucham shel mechashvei ketzim, which means the people who sit there trying to figure out when Mashiach is going to come, they should just be destroyed. It's not when. Don't you understand? It's not a date. It's not like he comes now. It's an achievement. Mashiach is an achievement, which means that we're in it now. We are living the process now.
Is there even at the end of it?
Yeah, and there could be several, because there's a commonwealth, right? So yeah, there's an executive, but it's not about him, right? He's not Magic Man and nothing like that. Nothing like that. The best we'll ever do is King Solomon. Yeah.
What about evil?
What about evil?
Will evil just disappear? I mean, because there are evil, and evil causes bad. So all the bad in the world will just go away?
No. The bad in the world, that would be a difference between this and this. So it seems like in stages, when you talk about evil, evil is tolerated. If evil is not tolerated, it is stamped out rather quickly. And you don't have problems with it. Problems with evil is that they become cancerous. If you allow things to happen, they will happen with more and more frequency. And they'll get worse and worse.
So, isn't there a tradition that there's going to be two Mashiachs?
Yes, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David.
Right. And the first one comes in the context of worldwide conflict and dies.
Yeah.
And then is replaced by the other Mashiach.
Yes. So again, that goes back to the Rambam. The Rambam writes that there are arguments among the rabbis as to what the order is going to be and how it happens. And he says the reason there are so many arguments there is because no one knows, because the verses are unclear. And he says, two statements which are like unbelievable. He goes, number one, we'll know it when it happens. Number two, he says, lo ikar ze badat. This is not something you should spend your time with because it doesn't matter. He says, it literally doesn't matter. So is Mashiach ben Yosef going to come, and is he going to be this tall, and is he going to die? Who cares? Do what you need to do. Live your best life. Do better. Be greater. Make others greater. Do that. And then we'll find out how it happens when it happens. Quite emphatic about that, actually. It's really, really cool. Yeah.
We talk about our ancestors, but I don't think you can talk about death and destruction, and then at that moment, you know, when we feel that we're the farthest from Mashiach, it's probably when we're the closest. But we don't have to go so far in our ancestors. I mean, we have the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And then we got the state of Israel.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of miracles with the state of Israel that
Daily.
have made it. I mean, if we could have built the temple
Yes.
if we wanted to.
Correct.
So are we in the time of Mashiach and not realizing it and fulfilling our promise?
Yes.
You know, and
Yes.
so it's
We're
just a
in the
matter of us
process.
recognizing that.
We're in the process.
Because, I mean, what's worse than the Holocaust than what we just witnessed?
Nothing.
I mean, I guess we have to see
Yeah.
worse.
So my grandfather, Oliver Shalom, is quoted as saying, I never heard him say this, but I've heard it quoted from him. He said that the Holocaust was Gog uMagog, which is the war that you were referring to, and he said you pay in advance. Just like in Egypt, they paid in advance. In the desert, they paid in advance, right? You pay in advance, and then you get the land of Israel. But, which I think is very, very logical, makes a lot of sense, but especially historically. But I agree certainly that we're in the process. So to go back to what David was saying, if you look at that Talmudic excerpt, it says 2,000 years chaos, 2,000 years Torah, 2,000 years Mashiach. Well, we're almost at the end of the 2,000 years. Mashiach isn't even here. You're in it. The 2,000 years are the period of Mashiach. You're in a process. The problem is when you're in it, you don't recognize it as a process. You misconstrue it as the world. It's not the world. It's your world today as you see it. And again, we're in it. Yeah.
So isn't that like the class you gave last year about the plagues? And
Meaning? Oh, in terms of it not being extraordinary? Extra supernatural.
right,
Yes, nothing supernatural.
right. No, but the concept was that people wouldn't necessarily recognize it as being a miracle that's
Yes.
taking place because it's all a part of a natural process.
Yes. Very related idea. That's it? Bye.
No.